Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey My Mother's Son podcast. Now I'm joined with best-selling author Karen Rudolf, who's also the founder of Tranquil Solutions. And again, that's solutions, not solutions. And I'll let Karen explain a little bit more about that throughout the conversation. But before we get started, first of all, Karen, thanks a lot for joining me. And
Thank you.
you bet, looking forward to it. But just introduce yourself to the listeners in your own words. Who is Karen today?
Who is Carol? Oh boy, we're many, 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 many yes. I'm an author. I'm a facilitator. I'm a coach. I'm a mentor. I'm a teacher, and author and speaker. I do many things, but I think above all else, I like to call myself fondly. I re-engineer human perception for a living, and I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that as well. And just, let's unpack that a little bit. What does that mean, re-engineering human perspective?
Okay.
It's, I mean, there's a lot in that. So I'd like for you to kind of explain what you do in that.
It's chuck full because what we think about, we bring about. And in the space of looking through life through those little, I have horses, so those little blinders is we exist, and many people exist in those spaces. But until you see what's possible and what's out there and widen the perspective, then our choices become broader, possibilities and opportunities become even broader. And then the next thing you know, you're enjoying life and opportunities just keep showing up. And so I create thinkers, and I allow people to create their own choices. I don't tell anybody what to do or how to do it. I just pose different questions for them to choose. And I love it. It's fun.
Yeah, I love that. And I love just, making that change is so important. Again, from a person who, decided to walk away from a 30-year career, something I loved doing. Um, but yet just a little shift in perspective allowed me to, um, you know, again, I was doing, working with kids and impacting their lives, is doing very good work, and never would have seen myself doing anything else. And then just a little bit of a perspective shift, you know, allowed me to see things differently. And now, what my wife and I are experiencing by traveling full time is above and beyond anything I would have expected, even as recently as 4 years ago. Ugh,
Exactly. It's exactly what I'm talking about. Because I come from a nursing background and I had the same thing. It was a perspective shift. It was like, this isn't working. I'm getting burnt out. I'm a empath, and I was taking everything home with me and I was stressing out. And I just completed right before this call, I did a master class all about from stress to success. And that's been I was stressing. I had come from a divorce where my hair was coming out in clumps. I was burning out my adrenals and I didn't know what to do. And everybody's like, here's a script. Here's, and I'm like, no, I think there's other alternatives. I want to know myself and know what's going to work for me so that I might not just empower myself, but now, like, I had no idea I was getting into coaching or mentoring or teaching or anything like that. I thought I was a nurse and a mom, and it was like, what do you do with that, And it was one of these moments in time where I looked at my children and I went, oh my God, life is happening. I'm in this space of victimhood and the sky is falling. And oh my God, I don't know what to do. And, he's left and, which way do I go kind of thing. And I remember having to be an advocate for myself because I had to go before the judge. And I remember, and this was like a pivotal point when the paralegal said to me, Karen, the judge, if you two can't come to a decision, the judge is going to decide what your life is going to look like. And I went, that doesn't resonate with me at all. It's like, don't tell me what to do or how to do it kind of personality anyway. So that woke me up, and I realized that not only am I my own advocate, but I'm my children's advocate. And what more importantly am I teaching them? And boy, in a moment I shifted and I said, I'll never be in that situation again. So I delved into communication courses. The next thing I knew, it was like I'm opening my eyes and I'm a coach. And it was like, I'm a what? Okay. I'm opening blink. I'm opening my eyes. I'm an author. I'm a what? So you never know which way life is going to take you until you open up the perceptions of and the possibilities of change. And it's releasing the old that isn't serving me, victim, and was not serving me. It was just keeping me on that constant perpetual hamster wheel. So I've made it a life passion of mine to get people out of their heads, out of the stresses, to be able to function in a space of well-being with the proper tools and strategies to really morph them forward into living a life they love. That's my hope and dream.
I love that. Um, was there something, because obviously it's one thing for you to get through that and get out of that victimhood, mindset, but what was it that made you want to help others as well? Once you got to a better place, what was it in you that made you want to help others?
Great question. It's like my mind just went. I remember my girlfriend saying to me, Karen, like, you're going through this divorce, you got 3 kids. Like, what's your dream? And I went, my what? And she says, your dream. And I'm like, I had no relatedness to the word at all. And I had to look it up and I cried my eyes out because I had no relatedness to the word dream. So fast forward, as a result of that, now when I work with my clients, it's in my contract with them, my agreement, I don't call it contract, in my agreement with them, that um, they have to have a dictionary because we use words without necessarily meaning it. So when we're communicating, and as I shared earlier, it got me taking communication courses. So words became a catalyst for me because everything is energy. And when we look at frequency and vibration of the words we're talking and they're coming out of our mouths, where it's creating the impact of how it's showing up in our lives. So I think what really shifted a lot for me to support others was as people used to come to me all the time with questions, and I would give my opinion, and then I'm like, I don't want people giving me. I hired Oprah's coach. It's good for Oprah. It wasn't good for me. But I thought if it's good enough for Oprah, it's going to be good enough for me. And I put myself way back into debt. But one of the things, I live in the East Coast in Florida, and she lived in the West Coast in California. And she was telling me what to do and how to do it. And this is what we're doing here, and this is working here. And I'm like, how do I relate to that? And I'm clear that's not who I want to become. And I want to be a greater coach than that. And I want it because I believe, because I'm trained in the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. So when I look at my clients, I look from what I call a W, holistic, as a whole, rather than just like, okay, let's just zone in on this, where she was just zoning in on one little fraction of my life. I'm like, that just doesn't align or feel good with me. So I create alignment and empowerment through the words we speak, through our environment, through as above, so below. So I believe we have the answers within us. So it's my job to help excavate all that good stuff.
Yeah, love it. And then from one author to another, what then led you to, I guess, at what point was it that drove you to then write about these experiences again to help others?
Well, first off, I was a new coach. I was a newly divorced, and it was like, oh my God, here I am. I put myself out there. I have no idea what I'm doing. I took the courses, and it's like, now what do I do with it, kind of thing. And I said, nobody knows who Karen is. So just on a whim, I wrote 5 Ways to Create a Ripple, which is now on Amazon. And 100% of those proceeds, chapter 1, I should say, is all about the anatomy of a smile. So 100% of those proceeds go to Operation Smiles, which is all about creating smiles for children. And what a better way to light up the world, and that lights my heart up, than to give back. So that was probably my first book about how to, people were always asking, oh, I want to do for others, do for others, do for others. So I'm like, but you're not doing for yourself. So I look at it from a different perspective. So that's what started me in this whole perception thing. And then along the way, I found Wayne Dyer as a mentor kind of thing. And I remember hearing Wayne say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. My brain heard it as when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I mean, the way you look at things change. So different perspective, same meaning, right? But that meaning that I gave it took me globally around the world, and I started facilitating and presenting in creativity communities. So I started doing creative problem solving, and it was like all of these things started building, and it was like, oh, I love my life. This is awesome. I'm traveling, I'm meeting the most amazing people, and I'm giving back from a space of heart, thinking outside the box, realizing there is no box. It's
Yeah.
just the box that we put ourselves in.
Yeah.
So
So without giving away too much of the book, you know, what what are some of those ways to create that ripple, and what do you view that ripple to be?
we're the ripple. I believe we're the ripple. And we get to choose, the power of choice, the power of awareness starts with awareness. So once we have the awareness of who we are, what our strengths are, I always look at people from a space of strength rather than weaknesses. I don't want to know about your weaknesses. I want to know about your strengths, because we could always align with people to lift us. And so that book was pretty much a little bit of a, giving 5 steps, but actually also giving a little bit about the way I think. So those who align with me. And then after that, during COVID, I was asked to do Ignite the Entrepreneur. And that came up from my perspective of what it was like to start my journey, and that spark moment, that ignite moment. And out of that one, I had a major accident this past year, in Costa Rica, where I didn't speak the language, and I broke my femur, fractured my pelvis. I went flying off a horse, and I did a number on my back. And I was there for 3.5 weeks, and I created a team to get myself home, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but thank goodness I knew who I was. I work the work, I do it, that I was able to create the team, communicate effectively, like, I'm taking care of me right now, being an advocate for myself, and I need you all to support me in getting myself home safely. And, I overseed it all. The authors, the publishers of the Ignite series was following my journey. And so they asked me to do Ignite Your Faith book. And I got that one down. Laying in bed for 3.5 weeks in a foreign country. I got that one down pat. So that was more of me emoting, right? Because I knew that if I didn't get it out, the stresses, your body is 78% water. So every cell is carries the water to organs, and every organ is going to create ease or disease. And I knew I just wanted to get it out. So that one, and then there was another book, Wickedly Smart Women, which was all about intuition, and for women, from women to women. And it they all became international best-selling collective books. And out of a result of that, this one just came along, which is launching this week. And this is the America's version of the holistic PDF, as opposed to the physician's desk reference that's used today. So people have choice, they have alternatives. And I'm really excited about the opportunity that came along with this, and really being a stand for people's well-being. And if you don't know what you don't know, you just stay in that cycle.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about holistic health, and kind of the difference between traditional healthcare, or as I like to call it sometimes, sick care.
I just had this conversation in my past call, and there's a time and a place for traditional medicine, absolutely. But if you're in the space, I believe if we're in the space of something just starting to brew, because your body's always shocking, and if you don't listen, it's going to knock you upside the head. And if you don't listen and you just say, I'm just going to pop a pill, it'll go away. See, we live in a society where most people are very, we're busy, 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 doing, doing, doing. It's so easy to pop a pill. But for every, right, cause and effect, law of cause and effect, right? For every physics, for every, there's an opposite and equal reaction. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So every pill you pop, there's going to be a cause and effect. And I get so many phone calls from people saying, oh, I just got one last week. Oh, I'm on a cholesterol pill, Karen. And I'm not even practicing nursing any longer. It's like, go ask your pharmacist. But my shoulder hurts. And I'm like, well, if you look it up, that's part of the effect of taking that pill. They didn't know it, and they were taking the pill for a year. Right. So there's a time and a place for that. I went into, I call them, forgive me for the doctors that are listening on the call. I'm not knocking you in any way, shape, or form. I went into what I call a doc in a box now. It was from my experience, right? We're going to create stories from our experiences and put meaning to the experiences that we have. I'm an asthmatic. So during the fall season here in Florida, the leaves fall and I get, so I said, I use Ventolin and I only use it when necessary. I don't like suck it in constantly, but I need a prescription for it. You can't just get it over the counter. And I went into this, facility. And I said to the doctor, I'm a nurse by trade. Oh, you're one of those. And I said, well, I know my body really well. And my body is telling me I need this prescription. Would you please write it for me? He listens to my heart and my lungs and he says, you have congestive heart failure. And I went, excuse me? I said, no, I know my body really well. I don't have congestive heart failure. He goes, yes, you do. And here's a script. He writes a script and he hands me a script. And I said, excuse me, you're giving me the script without even testing me for it, just listening to, I don't have congestive heart failure. And he's sitting there arguing with me. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll even pay for the x-ray. Right. So then what's happening is he walks out of the room. I do the x-ray. I'm sitting there waiting for 20 minutes and I'm scanning in my conviction. And then all of a sudden, it's like the dopamine drip. And the dopamine drip is what I call, right? If it's there for fight or flight, but it's what raises your blood pressure and it's what causes the stresses to, take that fight or flight. And then I'm thinking in my head, like, oh my God, who's going to feed the dog? Oh my God, who's going to tell my kids? Oh my God. It's just like I'm working myself up now where I'm sure my blood pressure went up in the what ifs and all that, created reality, right? And he walks in the room and he says to me, you were right. And he starts to walk out of the room. And I said, excuse me, I came in for a prescription. He throws it at me. And I said, one other thing. Had I not known my body well enough, had I not been an advocate for myself, you would have just written my death sentence by putting me on a cardiac medication of all things. I said, what happens if I was a little old lady and I didn't know to ask those questions? And he stormed out of the room. It's those little things like that. And I'm not saying all doctors, forgive me, I don't mean to say all doctors are like this because my experience in Costa Rica was all, but he was compassion plus. And he was very supportive. Whereas you have people that are just on this, like they've got to perform and they've got a timeline and they're like in and out and in and out. And, if you don't ask the questions and come armed with questions, you don't know what your alternatives are. I pay out of pocket for holistic and preventative, right? Because I believe in preventative medicine. And so this way, if and when the time comes, if I need it, I know it's there, but I also know what my alternatives are.
Right. Was it difficult for you to make that shift from being a nurse in the traditional healthcare system to this more holistic approach?
Not at all, because part of it was intuition for me. It was just something I believed within when I was like 5 years old. I used to live in Fall River, Mass, and there was this big forest at the end of my block, and I used to go there and like heal my Barbie dolls and with leaves, what and so I've always known that there was alternatives. They probably would have burned me at the stake in some other lifetime, but I just always knew it was there. So yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about tranquil solutions. And it's not solutions, it's solutions. So it's SOUL.
Mhm.
Um, how did that come about, and what is really the play on words there?
Well, again, in 2007, I got a divorce and I was stepping into my coaching career at that time. And it was all about it. I don't have my logo up here now, but my logo is a horse with all these flames that actually are butterflies if you look close to it. And there's a butterfly in its nose. So I've always been into transformation. So the tranquil way of doing things is really looking at it from a space. I'm not one of these in your face kind of people. So, tranquil work for me. It could have been peaceful, whatever you want to call it. But I was looking for something that would depict the power of beauty, grace, and ease that the horse represents for me, the energy of the horse, in a tranquil way where people can really gain their thrivingness, their thrive queendom kingdom. And soul represents, from the inside out. I'm educated, as I said, in the mental, emotional, spirit, physical, and spiritual. So coming from all of that, tranquil solutions encompasses, again, as a creative problem solver, I find solutions to the challenges and the circumstances that people have. I support them in finding their own way, and I just guide them. I like to think of myself as a journey guide through that. And that was probably in 2007. My horse got struck by lightning, and the first horse died. And Florida is the lightning capital of the world, theoretically, or so I'm told since I've been here. And you always think, oh, it'll never happen to me. Well, when it happened, and it hit me hard. And the second horse got struck by lightning. And Truman still lives here in Sarasota with me. He's called the Miracle Horse. And the vet told me put him down. And I just remember going within, closing my eyes. And when I opened my eyes and I went, nope, he and I are going to be a catalyst for change. And he's going to survive and thrive. And the vet was like, and I was like, I don't know, it just sort of came out of my mouth and I'm sticking to it. you know? So, I mean, that's really how it started coming about. It's just choosing to become a catalyst for change and showing up as that and being that and learning to embody that in a way where it's just a natural way of being for me that I don't even think about it anymore.
So was it difficult to shift? I mean, you had all this stuff going on in your life, um, from going through the divorce to losing a horse to potentially losing another horse. You know, how easy or difficult was that shift for you?
I went fighting and screaming, to be honest, because what we resist persists. And my spiritual mentor, I was looking for something outside of myself during my divorce. I hadn't even thought to go within. And my spiritual mentor said to me, "Have you looked up the meaning of a lightning strike?" And I went, "I don't have to." She says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Intuitively, I know what it means, and I don't want to be responsible for it." And she says, "Okay, when you're ready, you let me know." And I went, "All right." And lightning strike is all about being a light in the world. It's being a messenger. So I feel like I've had a calling and I just keep following the calling. I don't even question it anymore. So was it difficult for me to do it until I owned it? It was difficult. Once I owned it, it was just, I feel guided and I just follow that guide. So has it been easy? No, but I love my life today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's funny how that journey we all approach I think we all go into it kicking and screaming initially, and then you know there's still times of resistance, but I think the more we trust, the easier it is to trust throughout that process.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I can definitely speak for that from my own experience, um, as well. Is that it's much easier to trust now than what it was 5 or 6 years ago, for sure.
Right. When I went down to, just as an aside, when I went down to Costa Rica, I didn't know anybody I was going on the retreat with. And I just thought, I'm going to stretch myself and expand my comfort zone. And I'm going to go meet these new people down in Costa Rica. And one of the things I love doing is riding horses on the beach. And I'm a horse person, so it won't be a big deal. Never say never, right? But intuitively, I said, I'm going to learn a lesson down there. And I know it's something, I don't know what it is. Before I boarded the plane, the word surrender came up for me. And then when I got down to Costa Rica, the day I was supposed to go horseback riding with this group of strangers, we had already gone on the catamaran the first day, and the second day was on the beach. Intuitively, I got the hit, don't go riding. And I went to the group leader and I said, listen, I think I'm going to stay back. And she's like, Karen, you love going on the board. You got to go. And the group is waiting for you. And I allowed myself to be guilted into it. And sure enough, the horse spooked. I went flying 6 feet in the air and landed on my butt and landed in the hospital after that. So, don't discount that, but the whole lesson, because every circumstance, every challenge we have, I believe there's always a silver lining to it. And when I step back and everybody's like, oh my God, you're in a foreign country, how horrible, but you're by yourself, your family isn't there, and they were going on and on. I'm like, no. No, I was looking out the window and there was a volcano out there, and all I kept thinking is, okay, one foot in front of the other. How do you traverse a mountain? Well, to me, it was the mountain. It wasn't a volcano until they told me. you know, um, it was like I'm looking at my feet that weren't working, and all I kept saying is one little toe at a time, and I'll get through it. And then I remembered from scripture, it was like, the faith of a mustard seed. So if you're brought to it, you'll get through it when you surrender. So my biggest lesson from that whole experience was learning to surrender and let go. And my life has just been, I mean, has it been easy? No, I can't say it's been easy. I can't say it's not been painful. It's a long recovery. I'm sitting here laying on the couch talking to you right now. Can't see me, but I trust and I still have faith. And I mean, just one opportunity after the other. And here I am talking to you about it. And, it could have been so much worse. I'm grateful. So, yeah.
So important. So important for sure. Karen, is there anything that we missed that we didn't cover that you think would be valuable to the listeners?
Yeah, I always have some good things, some wisdom up my sleeves. But, certainly buy this book. This is going to be a good one. This is going to be a game changer. I write a chapter in this book called The Language of Healing, Words as Medicine. So I'm excited about that. And look up, to pause, take a pause break. And, people say, oh my gosh, Karen, what an adventure. No, people will use the word adventure all the time. I challenge you to look up the word adventure and say, is that really what you're looking for? You might think differently. So when you change the way you look at things, the way you look at things change. Take care of you because you're not guaranteed tomorrow.
Yeah, amen to that. And just kind of expand a little bit on that take care of you component. I mean, I think that's something you mentioned earlier how you're an empath and so am I. And a lot of times it's difficult for us to take care of ourselves because we are often looking out for others.
Exactly.
So, but yet you can't fill from an empty cup. So, one of the most selfless things to do is to be a little selfish every once in a while and take care of yourself. How difficult is it for you, or was it for you to go through that journey of understanding how important it is to take some time to take care of yourself?
I love what you said, and thank you for putting that in because I teach the difference between the distinctions between selfish and selfless. And just to make it simpler, if you look at it, it's like putting on your oxygen mask first. They tell you that at the airport all the time. If you don't put on your oxygen mask, how are you going to so I walk the walk. I embodiment, right? It gets down to embodiment. And how do you embody it? You don't know what you don't know until you know it. So as an empath, I literally was taking it home in my nursing career. I was in oncology last. And I remember waking up, I'll never forget it, Mrs. Baker. I had promised her, never make promises you can't keep, right? And I had promised her I would do something for her. And I'm aging myself because we used to have like written records back then. We didn't have computers. And 3 o'clock in the morning, I literally sat upright in bed going, I made Mrs. Baker a promise. And I immediately got on the phone because I never fulfilled the promise. And I called the hospital and I said, would you please And they said, Karen, she passed. I have to live with that. How do you like not wake up in the middle of the night? So it was like not knowing what I didn't know. I had to learn ways and means of dealing with that. And one of them was being selfish. And my kids used to say to me all the time when, because I could always, they only knew me as being selfless, right? And when I started shifting my energy and taking care of me, I remember saying, you know what, if I fall apart, this whole thing falls apart. I've got to take care of me. And then, as being the first advocate for my children, what am I teaching them again? So I started taking me time. I'm important. I used to say, Daddy and I are important when we were together, and we're going to have like date night, and because he and I are important, and you and I will have one-to-one time because we're important, and then we're going to have family time because we're important. So I started learning ways and means of managing the empath. So when it comes up, I just say, oh, there it is again. And I now can shield myself from it as well, where I'm not wearing it. And my coach used to say, my spiritual mentor used to say, wear a bucket, imaginary bucket around your neck, and when people are vomiting into it, you just go here, and then when you're finished the calls or whatever, you just dump it. So I'm not wearing it. Or protect yourself, imaginary waterfalls, or whatever it is for you to create that boundary, because boundaries is self-care, and most people don't think about that. And so taking care of you first and foremost, because your health is your wealth, and that's where the vessel begins. If I, like I said, everything that I put out there and create value for others, I've either done myself or I'll say, let's go explore it together, because I want to know too. Because if I'm not being that, if I'm giving from, I can't give, as you said, from an empty well. You give from the overflow, the excess energy, the excess abundance, because otherwise you'll be drained, and then you have nothing to give, and everybody's walking away doing their own thing, and you're like, you know, exactly. So,
So important. So important. Karen, how do people find you on the internet if they want to reach out, to connect, to utilize your coaching services, to buy a copy of your book? How do they find Karen?
I'm all over social media. So certainly if you go to Google and do a Karen Rudolf, RUDOLF search, you'll definitely find me there. I'm on Facebook, Karen Rudolf. I'm on Facebook, Tranquil Soul Solutions. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. And my website, www.tranquilsoul, SOULUTIONS.com. And I've got a way of clicking to connect with me. And I love having conversations and seeing what's possible. There's always, when there's a will, there's always a way.
Karen, that brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things, and the whole world changes. What's one of the little things that Karen does to make the world a little bit better place?
I show up. I show up because I live in a we context rather than an I context. And when I show up for me, I'm showing up for you, and I'm showing up for everybody else around me, because that's what's going to make a difference in the world.
Love that answer. Karen, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. This is a great conversation. I look forward to the possibility of connecting when we get to Florida and having a little in-person conversation. That would be awesome. But this was a great conversation, and I really do appreciate you taking the time. For folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymothers.com. And Karen, again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you to all your listeners.